Hi everyone, so today I'm joined by Jane, who's going to talk to us about loss and grief.
Hi Kelly, thank you for inviting me along today. I'm Jane Anderson. I'm a Dynamite delegate and an author, and this is all linked to the loss, trauma, grief that I've been through in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. So yeah,
Is that me. Recent?
Yes, it is very recent.
Okay, so it could be quite sensitive then.
Well, I'm hoping not.
Okay.
But bear with me if it is.
Okay.
I'm sure it should be fine.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your situation before all of this happened? Because I think that sets the context.
Yeah. I'm basically married widowed, married with two children, teenage children. Charlotte, who's 19, and James, who's 17. And we live on the family farm up in the hills of Northumberland. I grew up on a farm, so I have a farming background, and as most people say, it's inevitable you'll marry a farmer if you're from farming stock. I always said I wouldn't marry a farmer, but hey ho, that's where I ended up.
Yeah, that's not my. I haven't got very much experience of that at all. So yeah, that's it. That's news to me. But yeah, it makes sense if you know. Yeah. If you've grown up with farming, then you probably will marry a farmer.
Not necessarily. I mean, there is a lot of people come into the farming world, but I always think it's much easier to be a farmer's wife when you've got a little bit of background as to what's going on.
You know what to expect then, don't you?
Yeah. So yeah, so that's me. Kids. Yeah. Obviously Charlotte's done her A-levels. James is working. So they're kind of a bit independent on, not.
Was that the case at the time of?
Yeah, I think. Well, Charlotte was in the middle of her A-levels. She was just starting her second year of A-levels when this happened. So, and James had literally started work in the June. Okay. He left school at 16 and started work. So.
Okay, so would you like to tell us what it was that
happened? Sorry, I should have said, shouldn't I? Basically, in 2022, I lost my mum, who I'd been caring for with liver disease, like palliative care, helping my dad, giving him a break, that kind of thing. So I lost my mum in the January of 2022.
So that's traumatic as well.
Yeah, and in the same year, I could tell a very long story about how it all accumulated, but having a very fit husband who worked on the farm, probably, I'm going to use the word typical again, farmer, fit and healthy, didn't want to stop work, bit of pain, and almost, I don't know, looking back, maybe a bit of denial that it was worse than what normal pain was.
So he was ill with something. What?
So we didn't know what that was. We didn't know. Time, so from sort of this time of year, for that year, he kind of pushed through. Okay. Like a lot of farmers do.
Can I ask how old he was?
50.
50, so not very old at all.
No, so yeah, fit and healthy. Tingly fingers, couldn't sleep, and eventually, in August of 2022, I actually made an appointment for him to go to the doctor.
Right, so he's been from January to August.
Well, probably sort of April time he started seeing a chiropractor for his back and things like that, with pain. But like I say, farmers have niggles, they do jobs, they're manual work, so they don't think too much of it. So we saw the doctor, she sent him straight for an MRI scan, and within a week we had confirmation that he had tumours in his neck.
Right.
None of us really knew what that was, because we didn't expect any news like that. So that kind of, well, it was like I can't really describe it, to be honest.
Sounds like a shock.
Yeah, it was a huge shock you know, the day he came back from the doctors, I still remember him walking past and he just said it's bad news and walked into the house. I was sat outside in the sun, waiting for him coming back.
Yeah. So were you expecting to have some news about what was wrong with him?
Or? Yeah, basically. We didn't know.
But you didn't think it was going to be as
We didn't serious. Think it was going to be a whammy like that.
Yeah, okay.
So we were expecting something from the doctor, and basically, you know, she was very good with both of us once, you know, we went in and spoke to her. And then we found out, obviously, we had to go for more tests. I was still recovering from my second hip operation, so I really shouldn't have been driving.
Right.
So we had the whole scenario of me being on sticks and trying to be supportive while we're going through this. And beginning of September, we got confirmation that it was actually lung cancer.
Right.
With the secondary mastitis, I can't even say it.
Yeah, that sounds like a hard word to say.
in the neck. And then we went into hospital the following Friday and Jonathan never came home.
Wow, so it was quite quick.
So from the actual confirmation of, I mean, obviously we knew it was cancer, didn't know where, but from the confirmation of it being lung cancer to his death was literally less than 2 weeks.
Right, so first you found out it was neck and then it was lung as well.
Yeah, because if it goes into the vertebrae, which I didn't know, if it's found in the vertebrae, and none of us really knew. It's been a very quick lesson of, we didn't Google, but the doctors were very, very good at explaining it.
Yeah, because Google can be even worse, can't it? It can make you, because it's quite graphic and it'll tell you the worst case scenario.
Yeah, we purposely didn't Google, and obviously we're very conscious of telling the kids not to do it. Whether they did or not, I don't know.
You can't control that,
no,
can you?
We can't. So, yeah. So that was kind of a wham bam, if I can say it like that. That sounds pretty kind of, that it wasn't traumatic or...
Going from having a few tingly fingers and a few niggles to cancer, and it's not just in your neck but it's in your lungs as well.
Yeah.
That's a massive shock, isn't it?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, I suppose for me, the kids, and well, Charlotte and James. Charlotte stayed in hospital with me. We got a call on Tuesday morning. I'd been going in every day. The children were obviously, well, we went for radiotherapy. They thought they were going to get him home. And then all of a sudden, within 12 hours of me coming home one night to going back the next day, I had 3 phone calls on my way into the hospital to say, get yourself here. So I stopped and rang my brother, who went and got the kids and organised for Jonathan's mum and dad to come into the hospital as well on the Tuesday. And Charlotte stayed with me. We stayed in the hospital until the Thursday when we lost him.
Right. And so at that point, did you know that that's what was going to happen?
Yes.
So you didn't even have time to get used to the diagnosis then?
No.
You were getting used to the fact that you were going to lose him?
Yes. It was kind of a very steep learning curve. A roller coaster is the only way I can describe it. We were kind of on the up, being told that he might come home, telling the kids that he might come home. Hence, James doesn't like hospitals, which is why he didn't want to come into the hospital to see his dad. And then being told that actually you need to get yourselves here fairly quick.
Right. And how was that for Jonathan? He obviously knew what was happening to him.
He totally knew, and you know, he asked to see his very close friend, who was our best man at the wedding, and he came in and actually gave me a break, and actually that really helped Jonathan. They sat and talked for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what he needed.
Yeah.
They moved him to a room in the hospital where he could see the sky. So that kind of helped him as well. And we just, well, I knew myself that I just needed to be there, no matter what.
Yeah.
And Charlotte was with us, and we took it in turns, because it basically got to the point where there was no communication other than like a grip of the hand type of thing. So
right.
But yeah, it was tough.
That sounds really tough. And
yeah.
You know, you hear about people. In fact, I know someone who has had that news that she hasn't got, as you know, she's got a life limited condition, and she's just traveling and she's making the most, and that wasn't the case for you and Jonathan. No. You didn't even have time to get used to it. You didn't have time to put anything in place. You didn't have time to travel or do any or arrange anything.
No.
So can I ask a practical question? Did you have things in place like wills and stuff like that?
Yes, you can ask. And we had made steps, obviously, during COVID. Obviously, everybody got a shock in COVID, like, you know, we didn't really know what to do. So we had made plans, and as soon as we got there was, you know, we discussed our wills, but they weren't signed.
Oh. So that would have left you with a massive problem then?
To a point,
right?
Because the wills were there and they were to be signed. The solicitor was actually on her way to the hospital on that Tuesday morning to sign the wills in the hospital, because Jonathan was totally with it up until that call. So basically we were told, because they were going to be signed and the paperwork was all in place, it basically meant that the will was there. But then I had to go through the whole process of applying for letters of administration or whatever it's called. I can't remember what so it wasn't quite as simple as the will, blah de blah. So
and was there a previous will to that?
No.
So
neither of us had wills.
Right. Okay.
And I think that is a big lesson.
And so in some situations, if the will wasn't signed and somebody disagreed with it or said, you know, that might have been a problem, but if that wasn't the case, then maybe it was easier to be accepted.
I think it was, we were I want to say lucky. It probably isn't lucky, because it's family, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think because Jonathan's,
it's hard to use the word lucky when it's happening.
But because of the situation we were in, I think you know, Jonathan's parents are both in their 80s, so, and Jonathan was their only son, so they had a lot of grief and a lot of well, I don't think I can't talk for them. I'm just going to talk for my side.
Okay.
And it wasn't easy for any of us.
Yeah, of course not.
So, you know, and I think it was never going to be an easy situation for me to deal with my father-in-law.
Right.
John. Okay. Because would never talk business either.
Right. Okay.
Jonathan talked with his mum and dad about what was going on in the farm, and I was basically, because I had a job and worked away from the farm.
So it's a family business and they're involved and you're not at this stage.
Yeah, before all this kicked off. I mean, involved as in helping out, and the kids
you knew
helped
what was going on, but you didn't really take responsibility for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a really tough period for us all in adjusting to not just losing a son, a dad, a soulmate, just the practicalities of actually we've got a farm to run as well. We've got a business to run. There's animals to look after.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there animals on this farm? Is there crops? What kind of farm is it?
Obviously we're hill farmers, so sheep, cows.
Yeah.
Obviously the time of year it was September, not as urgent. Cows weren't inside, so they weren't having to be fed every day, that type of thing. But it soon kind of came round.
Yeah. Well, you would need to plan for when it needed to be done.
I know, we did.
Yeah.
And that was tough, having to sit down and have conversation that none of us really wanted to have.
Yeah. So I remember when my granddad died and we had to have those conversations about like practical things, and there was a form to fill in, and I just remember my grandma was just so overwhelmed, and I said, "Can I fill that form in for you?" And she was so relieved. But I couldn't answer any of the questions, so then I had to go to her and say, "Oh well, what about this and what about that?" So, but it was really difficult.
Yeah. So, we're very lucky with we've got a shepherd who had kind of moved on from the job he was in, and was looking for something a bit easier.
Okay.
So it was like almost as if it was the sound, and that this isn't meant to sound as it will sound, almost as if it was meant to happen, that he was looking for another job, that kind of thing.
But that's good that those sorts of things fell into place and it worked.
Yeah.
So you had some things going in your favour when the chips were down.
Yeah, and I think also for James, who works away from home, it took the pressure off him, because there was like at 16, the pressure was to actually come home
and look after the farm.
Yeah, and what at 16, and one of the things Jonathan did say was, make sure he doesn't come home.
Yeah,
he needs to find his own feet and decide what he wants to do. So, you know.
So did you have other staff on the farm as well? Right.
No. So I think Jonathan's dad, John, actually put his wellies back on, and he'll openly admit that
in his 80s.
Yeah, he put his boiler suit and his wellies back on.
Bless him.
And actually checked the sheep, fed the sheep. I was obviously still recovering from my hip.
Yeah.
Couldn't get on a quad bike very easily.
No.
But I did do my bit, albeit just occasionally.
I'm just trying to imagine you getting on this quad bike, and obviously you couldn't at that point, but had you not had the hip replacement, would that have been a comfortable thing for you to do, or did you do it before? Had you done it often?
I had done it a few times to help out.
Yeah.
But
so it wasn't completely out of your comfort zone.
No, it wasn't like a shock to the system that I might have to do this.
Yeah.
But I'm not a farmer.
Yeah.
You know, the decision was made for me when I was leaving school at 16, because I had a younger brother.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough for us both to farm.
Okay.
So I went out and got another job.
Okay.
Different job, farm related, obviously, to start with. So yeah, I'm not a farmer. I'm not a physical. I haven't got the physical stature to be a farmer.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the consequences of him not being there anymore, and the practical things the decisions that had to be made.
Well, obviously Jonathan was a partner in the farming business, and obviously that was linked to the wills and everything. So that was a really difficult time for me, not knowing where I stood, because obviously I lived in a house on the family farm, but it wasn't mine. So the only way I can describe it is I got very angry and quite almost, when I look back, almost not very I want to use the word compassionate, but that's probably not the right word. Compassionate towards John and Elsie, Jonathan's mum and dad, trying to almost force them to make decisions when actually all they wanted to do was grieve for their son.
Yeah.
So in hindsight,
it's that uncertainty, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that was what was driving me to be angry and just get it sorted. I mean, I have to say we've got a brilliant relationship now, and we work together, and you know, everything's running as it should be, or as best it can be. Obviously, it's not easy for any of us.
Yeah,
but it's constant reminders.
A to B.
Yeah,
and that bit in between.
Yeah, so it's the anger kicked in, and I can remember a lot of my friends saying, "Jane, just calm down." And
you know, it's an emotion. You can't control it. Emotions are just there. the thing with emotions is if you like push them down, then they come back worse.
Yeah, and I think for me, I have to be grateful that they had my back. They knew that I was,
obviously
and
they wanted to help you to get through this situation.
And they did. I have an amazing circle of friends who've supported us throughout the whole
really
process. Good. So, but yeah, that it kind of went from anger to actually almost to the point where it was like, you know what? I'll just pack my bags and go.
Go where though?
Well, I don't know, but you know, like it's kind of like that. You like you said before, your emotions. You don't know what you're dealing with, and you don't really know.
You've never done it before.
No,
so you don't know
exactly.
What to do.
And I think that's the thing. Nobody teaches you how to deal with something like this. Everybody deals with it differently.
So what other emotions happened through this process of going from where you were, all of a sudden having this loss to where you are now? What kind of emotions happened for you?
It was almost like I felt as though I had no purpose.
Right.
And I don't know how, I don't really know how to describe it other than the fact I'd always been there on the farm as like an extra pair of hands, or making sure there was food on the table, making sure there was, as well as doing my job.
Yeah, so you had this role, and then all of a sudden the role exists because of your husband.
Yes.
Being your husband's wife,
yeah.
obviously, and now he's not there, so that role doesn't exist anymore. So you kind of have to create a new role. Or a new
so I kind of had to find myself again.
Yeah.
Not that I knew that at the time, but I had a good friend who said that she had something I needed.
Right.
And when people say that to you, you kind of go, right, okay. So, but, you know, because I was in the situation I was in, lost, no idea what I was doing, and almost, I was still working at that point, but obviously on compassionate leave.
Right.
That didn't help the fact I had all these kind of, what am I going to do now? What is my role? I can be a partner in the business, but that's not the same as being a farmer's wife.
Yeah.
And with the kids being more independent, they weren't relying on me driving them places, doing things. It's not as though they had little kids that needed them most.
So what sort of worries did you have, do you think, at that time?
I've never actually thought about it, to be honest.
But there was anxiety, but you didn't really know what it related to.
Probably, yeah. And I think that's the hard bit, because at the time you're going through all of this, people on the outside can see what you're going through. They're trying to guide you in the right direction. So it
sounds quite confusing.
Very.
Because I think at first as well, you don't have all the information.
No.
So you're going through a process of gathering the information that you need to be able to come out of it, and but confusion is a really uncomfortable place to be, and like someone said to me once when I was confused, and I've used it all the time since, at the end of confusion, what do you have? Clarity.
Yeah. And
so when you know that, then that makes you feel better. But if you're not aware of that, because when you're confused, you're just like, well, and you don't know where you're going. So, but if you know that it's going to resolve itself eventually, then it feels a bit better. But if before I heard that, I didn't realize that. I didn't, like, I knew it, but I didn't. It wasn't like you know, when you know something at the back of your brain, but it's not in your like consciousness now. So if you can bring that forward, that really helps. But if you haven't got that, knowing, trusting that it's going to be okay, then, and if you haven't got anybody who's saying it's going to be okay.
I know, and I think, you know, finding, like I said at the start, I'm a Dynamite delegate. I was guided towards Dynamite Lifestyle, which is a mentorship program with Kim Calvert, and a lot of people go, well, what's mentorship? and it's basically somebody guiding you on a path.
So now you haven't mentioned it, but you've got 2 books.
Was
that is that as a result of your dynamite?
It is
stuff,
yes.
Or did that happen first? Which way around was it?
No, once I got into the mentorship program, one of the things I've always wanted to do was write a book, and I always thought it would be sort of like a Roald Dahl kind of David Walliams sort of stopgap for farmers' kids,
right?
Because there's nothing kind of in that, like what our class is the middle stage of the stepping stone to grown-up books.
So I mean, so young kids' books are all about farms and cows and chickens and hens and all sorts, aren't they? Very farmyard. But I suppose once they get out of that stage,
there's
nothing.
It is Roald Dahl and David Walliams basically. That's all we managed to find. But it ended up, it was kind of, because I'll be honest, I probably was soul searching a little bit. That's the only word that I can think of. My first book was written about my life as a kid growing up on the farm.
Okay.
And I now know that was kind of a nod to my mum.
Yeah.
And then book 2 was written sort of October time last year. So towards the end of my first year of the mentorship program, and the forward journey of where I see myself going at some point. So that's kind of
the first
where
book,
I'm at.
It was about your mum and how, because you'd lost her and hadn't had time to grieve. Do you think? Is that why you wrote it, or
probably because of the roller coaster of everything else that happened that year?
Yeah. So it's all happening at once, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've had your both hip replaced.
Yeah. Well, I was
hips
actually
replaced, and then death of your mother, then death of your husband, and I suppose your hip replacements would have been planned.
November of the previous year. It was very quick.
So you didn't really have time to get used to that either.
No.
Then what about your mother? Was that?
Well, she had liver failure, so we knew she wasn't well, and we nursed her through COVID, during that time. But I was actually at home, literally 12 hours back from the hospital after my first hip op, when my dad rang to say that my mum had passed away.
Right, so it wasn't really expected.
Well, it could have been any time. We just didn't know.
Yeah, okay.
But I knew she was getting weaker, and I had gone and spoken to her before I went in for my operation. So part of me probably knew that something was going to happen while I was in, and she knew I was going for my operation, and basically,
I think those sorts of things, when you're having something like an operation, I think you have some fear around not coming out. Like, I've never been through an operation, so I'm picking up from what I've heard other people say. Some people have a fear of not coming out, whether it's conscious or not.
Yeah,
and possibly. Maybe that was it, or you knew that.
It could have been either.
Your mum was in that situation as well, so it could have been both. Things, couldn't it?
Probably thinking back,
So you had a bit of time to prepare for that, but you didn't have any time for your husband to prepare for that.
Not really.
Yeah, it just sounds like a massive. It just turned your life upside down.
Well, it did, because obviously you go from, I'm not saying one day, but it wasn't even sort of, you got the diagnosis, and then had, I can't explain it. It's hard to explain, because it's kind of, I'm not saying raw, but it's still very new.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have these things that happen and you can't put it into words, and sometimes you're able to, because you hear someone else saying something and you go, that's it.
Yeah.
But until you hear someone else say it, it's really difficult to verbalise it.
Yeah. And I think for me, just knowing that I can go and help other people.
Yeah.
I hope I can be an inspiration to other people to actually, for all it's hard, and we've been put in this situation, you have to grasp the opportunity that I've actually been given an opportunity to reset and be able to help other people.
And so have you got a plan for the future?
Well, I'm continuing to work with my mentor,
okay,
Kim, at Dynamite Lifestyle, and I'm actually now one of 20 delegates who are going out and spreading the word for her.
Okay.
Obviously, one person can't spread the whole
no
information, so I'm actually working alongside Kim to guide people to be given the opportunities, same as me, for both self-development and professional development. It's not just self-development that it helps with.
So I imagine that's given you quite a focus to sort of channel your energy, because you probably have quite a lot of energy around your because that's what emotion is, isn't it? It's energy. So that anger, you still need to release it.
And I think for me, knowing that how much it's helped me, because of it's linking into the mind and how the mind works and how your subconscious and your conscious and basically your thoughts, feelings and actions, like we were saying before, your emotions, how it all works to get the end result. And I'll be honest, I don't know where I would have been had I not been guided to do something like this. And I don't want to think down that road either. So that's the plan. Go out, spread the word, help waking people up one thought at a time, and
And do you still have days where you don't feel like maybe he's getting out of bed, or do you have ups and downs? Or
I think the only way to describe it is some mornings I'll think, oh, it's 6 o'clock, I need to get up. But then I know, because I've got the daily disciplines in place, there's part of it switches and goes, go and do your gratitude, you'll feel so much better.
So you've got something to focus on.
So
that sounds like you've got like a framework to help you when things, so it doesn't dip. And you've got to focus.
Totally. Or if I start, I don't know, obviously the farm emails still come through as Jonathan Anderson on the Google.
Right.
And so sometimes that's a bit of a trigger. And that sounds really weird, and it might sound really silly for some people, because there's photos in the house that I walk past every day, but actually it's the name on the email that triggers us, not I think that's, actually
that's quite, I would imagine that is quite difficult, because the photos, you've got control of them, you can have them there, you can you can move them, do you know what I mean? You've got control of that, but you haven't got control of what someone puts in your email inbox or posts through your door. So it's going to be unexpected, isn't it?
Totally. Just the little things that do trigger, but knowing that I've got the tools now, that I can go, maybe just go and sit in silence for 10 minutes somewhere.
Sometimes people talk about they might be doing something and all of a sudden they're reminded of something that happened, or a smell triggers a memory.
I think for me, the one thing that I do remember triggering was I brought an Indian takeaway home one night for me and the kids. And normally we used to like a takeaway, you eat in front of the telly, in front of the fire. Kids came through to get theirs, went back into the living room, and I was like, walked back into the kitchen to get mine. I was like, it's just me. And that really was a trigger. And don't ask us why an Indian takeaway can do that for somebody, but when you said about triggers,
it's the routine that you're used to, isn't it? So I would imagine that before, because you had this farm to run, it's not likely that very often you had to cook for just you.
No, that's
And so then you're faced with a situation that you haven't had to deal with for however many years it was that you were together.
24 years now.
So you've got this new situation that reminds you that he's not here anymore.
I know. So it's all the new things.
All the first, how is it when there's maybe it's like an anniversary, like maybe it's his birthday or the anniversary of him dying, or his funeral or something like that.
I think I'm going to go back to the material that we're in, because that I'm studying. I have found it hard. I've tried to make it, you know, we've all sort of like tried to make it just another day. And that might sound quite harsh, but for the three of us, it was easier just to make it like a normal day.
Yeah. I think whatever works for you.
And, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, it's Jonathan's birthday, it'll be hard for you. And there's part of us think, oh, is it supposed to be hard?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, actually, it is what I make it, not what other people make it.
Exactly. And I think that's what some people do to help. I don't know if it helps or not, but you know, if someone gets knocked over, like they'll put like flowers at the place where it was, and then they'll go back to it. And having never been through that situation, I'm not here to judge anyone's way of dealing with it, but to me it seems like that's stopping them from moving on.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, oh, that date, rather than making it another day, they'll make that date special, and then they'll build it up in their own minds, and then they feel bad because they built it up. So yeah, I think grieving is a very difficult and very personal thing to go through.
Yeah. I think because there's no rule book.
Yeah.
We're all different. Our minds will all work differently. We all have different ways of coping with things. And I think sometimes you just have to focus on yourself.
Yeah.
Which is very selfish sometimes. But you are the only person that can deal with what's going on in your body.
And people,
and your head.
Especially women, feel bad for looking after themselves. But actually, as women, we need to look after ourselves, because if we aren't healthy and, you know, in the best place, then, you know, everything else goes to pot. We can't look after anybody else.
No.
So yeah, it's really important to look after yourself.
I know.
But we're always like sort of say, oh, I know it sounds selfish, but
well, you see, I said it.
It's a need, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a want, it's a need.
Yeah, and I think the past 18 months have really shown us that. Actually, even to the point of looking back to, you know, growing up as a teenager and reflecting on the whole of my life.
Yeah.
Because well, weird things start going through your head, is the only way I can describe it, as to, you know, you start questioning yourself as to why me?
Yeah.
Or why us?
And then you could fall into self-pity, couldn't you? And
that's totally what I didn't want to do.
A downward spiral.
You know, it could have been so easy for me to do it.
Yeah.
You know, having been through the hip-ups, my mum, we also lost close family friends as well. In a period of maybe 2 years. So I could so easily have just gone,
I'm going to give up.
Yeah, what am I here for?
Yeah.
And then I look at my two beautiful kids and think, well, actually, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. To make sure they're okay.
I have to do this for them and build a legacy, be what it is for them, so they've got something.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your story. It was really interesting, and I can appreciate how difficult that was. So I'm gonna end the video recording there, and I'm gonna share some of your links in the I think they call them show notes, but that sounds a bit grand.
Well, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.